me all the lingo that I'm supposed to use. But, I guess we can go ahead and call the meeting to order. And, I guess you want to wait and see if she calls in for roll call. Or just text her.
We can. She can.
We go there.
We can just know that she checked in after roll call.
Go ahead and do roll call.
All right. Chairman Joe Smith is not here. Melissa Bass at this time is not here. Steve Hanna
Here.
Dr. Penn and co-chair Dr. Fitch.
Here.
So we have a quorum.
Yes, he's now with the minutes.
I'll second. Yeah, I've gone through them. So.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Approve the minutes. Executive Director's update. Mr. Hall.
Okay. As I was telling them when I was doing the minutes, I listened to myself talk about the events last time, and I realized I was talking kind of fast. I was naming all these events, so I wrote them down so it'd be a little, and I wrote people saying, where was that one? Because I was going over it a little too fast. So I got it written down for you on the third and fourth pages, so it'll be a little easier to follow. Yeah, as you can see, we've been very, very busy since the last meeting. We've had 9 fights since the last meeting, and we actually had another one scheduled that was canceled, or postponed, not canceled. We were at the New Daisy on Beale Street. Mid-South Boxing was there on October the 16th, and it was a successful event. It brings in the minimum, but we do get some licensing there, and there were some good fights. The level of fight is rising there. It is getting better. It's a club show, but the fights are getting better. We were supposed to have another boxing event at the Convention Center on October 20th. That's Prize Fight Brian Young's event, but it was postponed. And he actually rescheduled for December 15th and ended up being an MMA event. And then on November the 10th, 3FC went to Camp Jordan Arena in Chattanooga. It's the second event they'd had in Chattanooga. Very successful, great arena there, great fights. They're actually from the Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area, Sevierville area, but they put on a couple of fights in Chattanooga, and they've done very well there by having local fighters there. Joe Smith wasn't at that fight, but he was at the one before in August, I believe it was, when they were in Chattanooga. Okay. Then we have UCC, November 17th at the Fairgrounds here in Nashville. Great event. A lot of money was spent on the event. They had some great fighters in there. There was actually a UFC veteran on the card, Sean Salmon. Some really good local fighters were on the card. They have an ongoing light heavyweight tournament where the fighters just fought one time there, but they're going to fight again on the 25th and again in March or April when the next event comes. So that was a really good event. Had a really nice cage. Had a decent crowd, not a great crowd. In Mid-South Boxing returned to the New Daisy Theater on November the 20th. They're trying to get regular there. They were trying to get once a month. They're not going to have one in January just because of scheduling dates, but they're trying to get on a regular schedule there. And then just a few days later, we had Flower Power Boxing at Club Eclipse in Memphis, and we never had an event in that area before. It's a Hispanic club down in South Memphis, and it was a really good show. It had some really good fights. Actually, the level of boxing was a little higher there than it was at the Mid-South Boxing. Like I said, the Mid-South Boxing is rising. Then we had the XFC on December 7th, and that was a great fight. That was actually televised on HD Net, which we don't get much TV money from that, but it's televised, and it is a really good show, high-level show. You know, not UFC level, but just under UFC level. They actually have a guy who's fought here before. It's his second time to fight, named Nick Newell. You ever heard of Nick Newell? He only has one hand, and he fights mixed martial arts. And
so that's legal.
yeah, and he actually won their championship there, and he beat a really good kickboxer, and beat him really fast. I don't remember the exact time. It was within like the first minute or two. He suplexed him and choked him out. Yeah, it was incredible. And there was a little boy there that was from Indiana or somewhere who also had been born with one arm. They brought him up to the cage because he'd come all the way down to see Nick Newell was his hero. It was pretty cool. Yeah, so that was on TV. That was really nice. And then, like I said, the prize fight boxing that was supposed to take place on October 20th, they postponed their convention center date until December 15th, and they had prize fight MMA there. It was a very successful show. Had a great crowd. Arnold, what would you say? They had like probably 800 people there.
800 to 1,000.
Yeah, had a good crowd down there, and really good place. Hello.
Oh, it's Melissa.
Hey, Melissa. Okay, glad you're here.
Okay.
I'm doing the executive director's update right now. I was just letting them know we've had 9 fights since the last meeting. We actually had 7 fights in a row. 7 weeks in a row we had fights the 7 weeks before Christmas. And so I was just up to the 7th fight of that 7 right there. We had Mid-South Boxing at the New Daisy on December the 18th. And then this year, right after the holidays, we started right in. We had the 3FC at Pigeon Forge at the Smoky Mountain Convention Center, which was a great event. Really nice center. It's not as big as the place they've been holding in Gatlinburg, but it's really nice, and they had a good crowd there. We do have quite a few fights coming up. They're a little spread out at this time. I'm sure we'll have a lot more in between. But if you go to the next page, guys, we've got UCC coming up in Nashville on the 25th of January. Mid-South Boxing is returning to the New Daisy on February the 15th. We have 2 fights in one night on March the 8th. But luckily they're very close together, which I'm going to kind of run back and forth between those two. We've got the charity boxing in Franklin, and then we've got RFC, an MMA event in Spring Hill.
What's the procedure if we want to go and observe again?
You just let me know, and I'll tell.
Close to where I live, so.
Yeah, they can't. We can't ask the promoter for tickets. The promoter can't give you tickets.
Okay.
But if you're there in official capacity, we can ask you for a pass, for a credential.
Okay.
And so let me know ahead of time, and I'll ask the promoter for a credential.
And if we're there, we just sit in the audience and basically observe the workings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Just you're there to see what happens. I mean, you're there on official capacity, just observing the event.
Okay.
And let's see what else.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's right. The next event after that is April the 5th. Roy Jones. Melissa, have you heard about this? Roy Jones.
No, I haven't. I've heard a little bit talk about a Jones fight coming.
Yeah, they're trying to put together Roy Jones for April the 5th at the Convention Center in Memphis.
Really? Is that the Brian Young?
No, well, actually, Malcolm Terry and Jones's people are putting together, but I think Brian is getting involved in it also. But he's not the one who's actually putting it together. It's more Malcolm and Roy Jones's people, but I think Brian is getting involved. And it's not going to be televised, but there's supposed to be 2 title fights on the show in addition to Roy's fight. So it's going to be a really good event if they can make it happen. Then the next 3FC is actually the next day in Pigeon Forge. after the Memphis boxing. And then we have 3 more 3FC scheduled after that in June, August, and November. And there are some other events. There's going to be another UCC, I believe, in March or April after this one that we've got coming up in January also. So we have several events on the schedule, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more added to it. Also, the governor's meeting was, I believe, November 7th. They asked us to, they asked me to attend in case there were any questions. I did attend, and there were not any questions. And that completes my director's report.
Any more questions for Jeff?
None for me.
Thanks, Jeff, for reporting. And again, thanks for putting all this out on paper for us so we can easily kind of look at that. We'll move to Mr. Scudder for legal report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all should have a copy of the legal report in front of you. The complaint was against an unlicensed individual that was a nightclub that advertised promoting a females-only boxing contest where the prize was going to be some cosmetic surgery. The commission staff went and interviewed the owner. The owner said that he had been contacted by the local police department, and they advised him of the athletic commission statute. And after he found out what the law said, he decided that he did not want to have an event, and no event took place. Our recommendation is to dismiss the case. No request vote.
Okay. Any questions regarding this?
I'd make a motion to dismiss.
I second. All in favor of dismissing this based on legal recommendation?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
And also, just to let the commission know, the amateur rules are on my commissioner's desk right now. I expect to get them back just any day. After I get them back signed from her, it'll have to be approved by the governor's office and then by the attorney general's office. As soon as I get them back from the attorney general's office, I'll be able to file them with the Secretary of State. That's
That's
all.
good news.
I should get back just any day.
And as far as time frame goes for that, our next meeting, I guess, is in April. Would we have to do anything prior to them going into effect?
Probably not. We'll need to, once they go into effect, we'll need to have a rulemaking hearing so that there's not a gap. And the rulemaking hearing has to have a 50-day notice. That'll probably be the meeting after next, or next week.
That'll be for the permanent rules.
For the rules to become permanent rules.
And we'll want to make some changes in those permanent rules there. Talking about the no ground now.
Any questions? Anything else?
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Scudder. Appreciate it. Moving along, I guess, to old business.
Well, maybe as a follow-up to
Yeah.
that, and as part of old business, is that the rulings, does it include potentially lowering those insurance amounts down? Or is that
Well-
a whole separate topic?
That'll have to go in. That's a legal issue.
Okay.
It's in the law how much the insurance amount is. So as far as the pros, we'll have to change that by
Legislatively,
statute.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
But as far as the amateurs,
Yeah.
you guys can vote on that because that's just what we require of the sanctioning bodies. So you guys could vote today if you wanted to change that. But, from what we're seeing from these other states, well, I won't get ahead of myself. We'll talk about that. All right, second.
All right. That's the only question I have.
Any other questions? Going to old business. Is that what your first topic is there?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, if you look at the next sheets that I've got, it's on the insurance. Got a couple of things, just I went through again and requested the insurance requirements for nearby states again, just to make sure there were any changes and use the ones that we had before. And I got the rates from an insurance carrier, and I called, or I emailed the neighboring states and looked at that. When we look at that, it's basically what some of you guys have been saying for a long time. We have a lot more insurance requirements than any of our neighboring states. Mississippi now for MMA has none. They have $2,500 for boxing to be compliant with the federal statute, but they don't require it for MMA at this time. Missouri has 10,000 for pro. Kentucky has 5,000 for pro and am. Virginia at this time they have 50,000, but they told me they're changing it soon to 20,000. Alabama 20,000, South Carolina 25,000, North Carolina 2,500, Georgia 20,000. So we're at least double
And we currently have what again?
50,000. Now, Nevada,
For professionals.
Atlantic City, and California all have 50,000. Places that have the most fights. But the rest of the country does not.
Yeah.
I thought we had like 10
We've got
Mr. Chairman, are we all talking about the legislation now that's possibly reducing the insurance?
yes.
I have reviewed the material you sent, Jeff, and I thought it was excellent. And I think that if this commission votes to do that, I think that we ought to send that information, your research along with evidence to the governor's office that, we've done our homework and this is the reasoning and why behind this legislation so that we can get in better posture. Because I've had some discussions this week with lawmakers at the state legislature regarding this exact issue, and many are coming up to me saying, Melissa, do we have to tweak that bill? And we struggled with the insurance back then when we first wrote this bill, and the only reason we went with 50,000 was because we were trying to model up after Vegas as a big boy. And I think though our limit just went too high in doing so because it's made it unconducive for promoters and to take this to the next level. And after reviewing your material, doing some homework, talking to folks, these lawmakers even are going to fight and seeing the same fighters fight amateur 20 times in the last 2-3 years. And they're wondering why even. And so I had some discussions with them, and I would like to put on the table to make a motion to basically put in legislatively to reduce that to 25 grand and us have 25 grand across the border for amateur and professional.
I think that's a good number. I was going to suggest 30 or 35 so we could be a little more than everybody, but I don't think that's necessary. I think just matching. Like I said, the only state around us who has 50 is Virginia, and they emailed me that they're changing it to 20. So at 25, we would still have more than everybody but South Carolina.
Yeah, last time we talked about this, and like I said, this is great. You have to have all this data from neighboring states, and we have certainly modeled this after California, Nevada, some of the places that, obviously, you put it big boys, but there were two components we were going to look at. One was, what are neighboring states? What's kind of the average? And two, what's been some recent claim numbers? Do we have any idea of actually how much people are having to pay out in certain fights? What's been the average? What's been the exception?
I have gotten some information back on claims. Some of this I actually got this morning from Jay Augusta, and he said that because of the HIPAA law, he couldn't give us exact quotes or specifics on anything. But he said the 3 largest claims that have come across his desk is there was a knee injury, a knee surgery that cost $16,836. There was another ACL surgery for a pro fighter that was $14,712. And there was orbital surgery for $9,073. Now he says these are the largest claims I've had. He says keep in mind that I've had after the initial paperwork there could be more billing that was submitted directly to claims that he never saw. So he said they could be higher than that. He said these are the ones he's seen. He says most of the claims that he sees are about $3,000 and they're normally for lacerations because in pro MMA with elbows you have more cuts. But he's saying that they're not that high. Now I also talked to another insurance company and I talked to him on the phone and took notes. And he couldn't give me any exact numbers. But also I called the ABC because somebody suggested I call the ABC. I think Melissa did. I emailed the ABC and asked them if they had any information on that. And I also emailed the entire ABC body where every director got it. And I only got a couple of emails back. And Tim Lukanoff, the head of the ABC, said they did not have that information, but he called one of the biggest insurance companies for combat sports, which is Cole Insurance down in Texas, and they wouldn't release that information. They said it's not a good thing to have that kind of thing out there for people making claims, so they wouldn't release the information. And the other people who did respond from the other states, they were just responding saying, Jeff, if you find out anything, let us know. So apparently there is no big information out there like that. Now, I did talk to this other carrier, and he told me that the biggest claim that he had seen, now he's out west somewhere, just all over the country. He said he saw one for $233,000 for head trauma, for severe head trauma. But of course, if you got 25 or 50, it's a drop in the bucket. It's $233,000.
Well, being in the insurance business, I'll add this: if there's anything that's catastrophic in nature, to your point, it's not going to make a difference whether or not you have 20,000 or 100,000. We're all well aware of, they in the hospitals, it climbs pretty quick. The other thing I would tell you is that this type of insurance is similar to group insurance. If you work for a large employer, they're going to offer you, they're going to put together a plan design that meets the needs of the masses.
Right.
And they have to design those plans so that it's comprehensive as they can get it, but also affordable. Otherwise, employers, they can't afford it. It'd be nice to give every single employee of the state of Tennessee $1 million of life insurance, but they can't do that because they price themselves out of business. So they settle on 25,000 or 50,000 per employee, or whatever the number is. So similar to that, I think the fact from your research that if we're somewhere in between or above, in this instance, most of our surrounding states, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think 25 is a good number. And raise the amateur to 25, lower the pro to 25, so it's the same across the board.
And that's something we can vote on.
There's a motion,
The
actually.
amateur part, right?
I'm sorry.
He was saying it's something we can vote on. We can vote on the amateur part. We can't vote on the pro part.
We could vote to make a motion to go toward legislation, or at least
Right,
start to
right.
prepare, right? That's what Melissa was saying.
So, and actually, Melissa, you've already made that motion, if I heard you correctly. You would like to make that motion, is that correct?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to make it to pursue legislative efforts through putting in legislation, I guess, through the governor's office. We'd have to be in touch with Steve Marchek on it, but to make a motion to make it 25,000 across the border for amateur and professional.
Now, I have a question. For the legislation, that doesn't have to involve the amateur, right? So our
Correct.
motion
Right.
is actually going to be just about professional,
Correct.
and then we can vote separately on amateur. So is that your motion, Melissa?
Yes, it would literally just pertain to going in and changing literally just one sentence.
But I would like to make everyone aware that the deadline for submitting legislation to the governor's office has already passed.
Yes.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
That was the problem we were running into in having our meeting after that deadline.
What was that deadline?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
And when's the next opportunity?
Next year, right?
Well, theoretically next year, now we can try to get special treatment and get it put in, after the deadline, and I can ask that to be done, but I can't guarantee that it'll be put in the governor's package because they're already assembling that right now.
Melissa, do you have any favors you could call in?
Well, that was what I was just going to ask Ed. If we miss the governor's date, if there's lawmakers who want to sponsor this, I know there's, I haven't checked today, but in the House they were considering a 15-bill limit. But I do have sponsors who would put this bill in for us if we can do that. I mean, I know I have certain ethics things, and Ed, you may guide me on this, but I think I'm under certain ethics standards that because I serve on the commission, I can't necessarily lobby for the bill and go and meet with lawmakers to get their support. But I don't think there's anything that prevents me ethically from going and asking them that we've made a motion to support this legislatively and ask them to sponsor the bill, as long as I'm not working the bill.
That's
Is
right.
that correct, Ed?
Yes, ma'am. You couldn't lobby it, but you could, make them aware of public information.
Okay. Yeah, I've got some folks that we could go to that, I have some bill holders sitting out there that we could, if we pass this motion, we could go and get it effectively put in probably within the next week or two. I can have a bill drafted.
Well, and one of the things that we need to be wary of is doing what's called bootleg legislation, where you're trying to do an end run around the governor's office. So it can't be represented as legislation that the commission wants or the department wants.
Yep. Okay. So how does, Ed, what would you recommend? I mean, I would recommend we first pursue asking the governor's office because, that's easier path when it's not being lobbied. And in second, then you find out what we can do, that we could maybe get a bill in and not step on any toes up there.
I can go ahead and ask and see if maybe they'll let us get around the deadline.
Okay.
Because all that would have to be changed is the number from 50 to 25, right?
It'd be just a little short bill.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you find out in the next week or two about the governor's office if they'll allow late legislation, if they said no, then how do we go about what Melissa's talking about?
If Melissa can talk to the original sponsors of the bill to do an amendment to the bill and just change that one thing.
Okay,
that
so
would
do we
be
have to
good.
vote on that or anything else that would require like a phone call or anything? I'm trying to see like what would...
Well, you guys just voted that you
right
want
now.
to. Yeah, I think we're
We have a
good.
motion on the floor to lower professional coverage to 25,000.
I'll make a second.
That we want to at least pursue options for that, and we have a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved.
I'll contact the legislative liaison's office, and as soon as I hear back from them, I'll send an email to all you all when they tell me.
If this is something that we need to make a quick meeting for, I guess that's when we could enact the emergency meeting or whatever. We had to do something else on it. But all we're saying is that we want to move forward, if possible, with that and find out what options we have.
That's right.
The other thing is, as far as the amateur insurance, do you guys want to move forward with that now, or do you want to wait and see what happens with this first? You just leave things as they are until
Well, this is something that we can actually change.
you can actually
today.
change it today.
So it's
I would
10
be in
right
favor.
now, right?
No, it's 20. It's 20 right now.
It's 20 for amateur.
20 fair. So all it would be changes from 20 to 25.
Well, I thought it was 50.
For pros 50, for amateurs it's 20.
And so this is just us taking a vote right now today.
I'm just saying, do you want to go through changes right now, which will affect promoters who already have things in place, or do you want to say, do you want to take a vote? We're going to do this when this other one passes, or do you just want to wait to vote? I'm just saying, do you want to do this right now? Because all these fights we've got scheduled, they've probably already contacted their insurance, already have things in place for upcoming fights.
I think if all it requires is a vote from us at a meeting, then it can wait until we get
Right.
something happening with the pro side.
I agree.
I agree.
Agreed. We'll table that.
Melissa, did you have something?
I'm having a hard time hearing some of you.
So, Melissa, we were talking about whether or not today we should make any changes to the amateur coverage, which stands currently at 20,000. And what we're talking about is maybe we'll hold off and see what happens with the pro level. Since that only, and we can change the amateur just simply within a vote at a meeting. We may hold off on further discussions on that, because as it stands right now, it's 20,000.
Okay.
And one option was, does it go up to 25,000 and keep them the same across the board? Do we leave it at 20, or do we need to make changes to make it lower? So, at this point, any other discussion or thoughts on that?
Other than leaving it as it is, for now, I'd be in favor of just leaving
I'm looking that up. Jeff, are you certain on that? I thought our amateur was 25 and professional was 50.
No, it's 20 and 50.
20 and 50. Okay.
Yeah, but what we'd like to do, I think what the commission would like to do is change it towards 25 across the board once the professional gets changed. That's what
You know,
Since
on
it-
the-
That's my suggestion, is just to go in and change the statute now, and make it 25 across the board, just because they're taking the same risk, whether they're amateur or professional. And I just think it makes us look more standardized almost.
It would be good to have it in the bill, especially since we're taking over the regulation of amateur sport, of amateur MMA on pro-ams. So I think you're right. I think it would be a good move to have that. I think it would be good to have it actually in the bill instead of just,
You know, when the insurance person, I guess his name is Jay, was here, they wanted to, you can't hear me either. They wanted to reduce the amateur.
I would reduce it to 10, that's what their suggestion.
Right, okay. I thought we talked about reducing that as well, not going up on it.
Yeah, there were people that were wanting to actually raise it, yeah.
Okay.
So nothing was decided
And see,
yet.
the only reason I suggest 25 across the border, guys, is because I think that we're finding and seeing with this code now that it's been implemented for 3-4 years, the tweaks that we need to have on it. And I think that's one of the tweaks, is we've made it too easy for amateur to exist in our state and too difficult for professional. So by making it 25 across the board, I'm trying to say, guys, I don't want to make it so comfortable for you to be amateur. I want you to take your fighters to the next level in your organization and not feel like financially that's what's preventing you.
Right.
So I think if we reduce the amateur insurance at this time and go after reducing that, I think we're just making it even more easier for them to stay amateur
You're right.
and not pay our fees.
That's exactly right, Melissa. But something
So
just
I think
occurred to me.
I'm proposing that, yeah, we do go up a little bit. My motion was that we do go up a little bit on amateur, and we pursue making it 25,000 across the board for amateur and professional, so that we're just not defeating our purpose here.
Melissa, just to be sure that you heard Mr. Mullen, though, I'm looking at better than 10 fights that probably already have all their insurance in place for 2013.
Yeah.
Do we want to require those folks to go back through the
Oh, no. Well, for one, the bill would not go into effect, and it didn't even pass till July 1st.
Right.
And so nobody before July 1st would be effective. And if we needed to, and Ed helped me out with this, could we pass a rule that, anybody who had their permit in before that, or do we need to do that in the legislation, that if anybody had their paperwork permitting in before July 1st would not be effective?
I think we just need to leave it at July the 1st. I think that'll give plenty of time for the notes to get out.
Yeah,
If it does get
Jeff,
passed.
normally, the effective date's not till July 1st,
So it won't affect
this
you.
affect a whole lot of folks that already are booked with you.
Melissa, something just occurred to me. We were just talking about legislating that amateur and pro be the same. We don't regulate amateur, so I don't think we can put that in the law right now. But what we can put in there is that it's 25 for the pro-ams, since we're going to take up the regulation of the amateur portion of the pro-ams. So we can put in there that it's $50,000 in all pro events and pro-am events, and $50,000 for amateur, $25,000 for pro and pro events, and $25,000 for pro and AMs and pro-ams. And then we can just put it to the sanctioning bodies for the strictly amateur, raise that to 25. So I don't think we can put just the amateur part in the law, can we, since we don't regulate amateur?
No, and
Yeah.
we don't have that in the law or the rules, so that's
Yeah.
what gives us so much flexibility as to
Right.
what we can do.
But when we had those guys, there were two sides of that argument. This was a couple meetings ago where we had some folks come in and discuss that it was too high.
Right.
And they actually had shown us some numbers, and we're calculating some numbers about how you went up by 5,000, how much of an increase that was. And I can't remember specifics about that, but by going up from 20 to 25, is that going to be a big deal for these?
Well, in the policy that Jay Augusta presented, it didn't go up arithmetically, I guess. It didn't go up. It went up geometrically. It kind of. But the numbers I got from the other guy were not that way. So I guess it just depends on which company you get your insurance through. There wasn't the huge jump from 25 to 50. I guess the other guy's 25 was probably a little more expensive, but his 50 was less. So the jump made sense in his, where it was a huge jump in Jay's. And Jay told me recently that not as many people in Tennessee were using this company now. I guess because this other guy had the lower rates.
Well, I guess if it's something we're talking about making a change on, obviously if people are getting fights set, we've got a calendar that goes out and we've got dates going through to November. We would have to give some time change. I agree, if we are going to make a change, if we ought to say effective
We should know
July
at the next
1st.
meeting if we have a chance.
So we
At the
actually-
next meeting, we should know if the governor's going to put in his package, or if we've got a bill in place that could come. And then if we can put a notice on the website, and there's a note that says new or reminder or something right in the middle of the webpage, we can put a notice in there that says effective July 1st. If the bill passes, this will be, so people will know that it's upcoming. But like I said, we can put that in after the next meeting. I think it still gives us 3 months.
So as soon as we vote on the amateur, it goes into effect?
Or you could
We
vote
can say
to put it
whenever.
immediately, or you could vote to do it on July the 1st. You could vote to
So we're
make it
still
go.
saying at the
Yeah.
next meeting, once we find out about legislation, is when we're gonna vote on this
Right.
amateur?
Right.
Okay, just checking.
I'm getting bits and pieces of it. I don't have the volume. I'm not getting the volume from y'all. But I think, and maybe you can help me out with this, Ed. But would you need to draft the bill, Ed? Would we have to draft the bill? Fill me in on
Generally,
procedures.
I would go ahead and draft it, and well, first I'll find out if they're going to let us get past the deadline, and then we usually draft the bill and submit it to them, and it goes up through the chain.
But it'd take very small changes for this. It'd just be a few words, a couple of numbers.
It's just changing the number.
Now, Ed, if they don't do that, or they deny us, are you going to get in contact with me and we'll need to file it a different way?
I will email everybody as to what my answer is, but I can't really advise you to do it a different way.
Okay. That answers it. Okay.
I mean, I just can't tell you that's the way you need to proceed.
Any other thoughts, Melissa? Any other questions? Did you hear him okay on that last comment?
Yeah, I did. As long as, I would be happy to do it if we get denied, but I just want to make sure ethically that I'm in the right posture in doing so. I definitely know there's sponsors who still support us making any additional changes we need to this because it was a very lengthy bill and, it was the first time in Tennessee for this in the history. So they realize there may be some changes that come down the road, but I just want to make sure that I'm not doing anything that conflicts with my position on the commission.
Well, I think you'd be okay letting the sponsors know what has been said in a public meeting, just for informational purposes. But I don't think it would be appropriate for you to go to a legislator and say, the commission would like you to do this.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know the difference.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on amateur? Do we want to make any changes or any discussion further on changing that today, or do you want to wait until the April meeting?
I would like to put on our April meeting that we vote or further discuss on changing the amateur to 25,000.
So put that on the agenda for April.
Yes.
Mr. Hannon, thoughts on that?
That sounds good.
Ms. Bass?
Yes.
We're talking about holding off on changing the amateurs and discussing this in April, which would still give us some time. We'd have a better idea what's going on with the pro. Any thoughts on that?
I couldn't check.
So we'll table that. We'll put it on for April meeting. Any other insurance discussion?
None here.
So the, can we do the next, which is the SMART report, is that where you are? Yeah, so the SMART report is very brief, mainly in that I have been delinquent getting in touch with Mr. Mullen. I had planned on getting together in the end of December, before this meeting, beginning of January, but I think his schedule's been as crazy as mine. So my apologies to the commission and to Mr. Mullen. I had every intention of trying to make that happen. So I've not met with Jeff to kind of go over anything, and what I would like to, we got a weird sound here. Is it?
We need to fix the technological difficulty.
Where's that coming from?
Melissa, are you still here?
Come from the volume?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
It's not coming from over there, it's coming from over here somewhere.
It's up in the vent.
Keep going.
So I guess, I haven't met with him officially to review anything. I will say, just off the cuff, that I really appreciate you putting some of the stuff together, getting ahead of time, the agenda. Certainly this packet today, talking about, things that we'd addressed. We have a cover sheet looking at upcoming flights. We've got follow-up already on the insurance claims and as far as what other states are doing. And we've got some spreadsheets that we're working on, which we're moving forward in the right direction. What I would still like to do is I'd still like to meet with you if we can. I know your timing is difficult. We may have to do this just over the phone since you're in Memphis. But what I'd also ask the commission would be if you all had comments or thoughts, if you could just email them to me. And then once I gather all that, I can meet with you, Jeff, directly or on the phone, and then have a better summary come April, which still gives us some time for prior to that meeting, which will probably be in August, I guess. So my apologies again to the commission. If any commissioners have any comments directly to Jeff, I'll open the floor.
I'm sorry, something popped on y'all. I'm sorry on my computer.
No problem. I'll forward any emails.
Okay, I'll send a reminder email just to maybe have a comment. Any comments at this time for this meeting?
So what we talked about before was after you talked to Jeff, we would sort of review the evaluation and then give our comments back to that. So I think we can still do that. If you talk to him and then there's like some kind of summary or something you email us, then we could respond. We would have something more to respond to.
I think we had mentioned if you guys wanted to, any comments on things that you would like, comments about me or the job or what you wanted done, I think you were going to send them comments before.
And then I was going to meet with Jeff.
That way it wouldn't be just his ideas. If you guys had any ideas to add of things you wanted him to talk to me about or ask me about or whatever.
See, I think I understood it differently, that we would respond after he had already met with you, because then we have to approve the final, we have to approve the final, and then you might have things you need to ask us after your evaluation. Maybe it has to go both.
It's a tough scenario because we're looking at there's 5 of us on the panel, and I think to have one person, I just don't want my voice to be the only one that Jeff hears, and I know everyone's got different perspectives on this commission that might want to have addressed, and so it'd be helpful for me to meet with Jeff to have just some thoughts from if there aren't any, then we can go over what my thoughts are.
I think it's a good idea if you have any comments and thoughts that you give them to him beforehand after that way.
And then what I'll do is I can write up my summary meeting with him and then have it ready for April's minutes.
Because you might have concern. Okay, so we will send anything we have to you before you do the evaluation, then you'll meet with him, because then you might have things that you want to share, and then we'll do it again.
It's a tough scenario because ultimately probably the most ideal scenario would be for us all to meet with Jeff, but at the same time I know it's inconvenient.
I think we all voted, we were comfortable with you.
So that's what I'm going to do. So if I can get some comments from the board, and then Jeff, maybe after this meeting we can try and get a couple time work.
Okay.
So moving on to the tech spreadsheet.
Yeah, spreadsheet. I put together a spreadsheet that Dr. Fitch and I talked about. That's going to give us an idea of how much each event is talking. I've been so busy with these fights. Like I said, I had 7 weeks in a row. Then we had the holidays, and I actually took a couple of days off. Then we had another fight this past week. So I have not done any more work other than just setting up the spreadsheet. I've still got some more work to do to plug the numbers in and everything. And hopefully we'll have that for you. I'll have some time in the next couple of weeks. We'll put that together and have something you look at the next meeting. I just wanted to tell you where we were on that.
The way this is set up, and are you finding that it's going okay to enter it? And I mean, does it help you at all in your organization, or is it really just?
It's just, I think the idea is just to see.
It's helpful to us.
How far we are. The spreadsheet we're talking about is if we're losing money on the small fights, if we're losing money on the middle fights, if we're losing money on the big fights. Of course, we have many big fights. Basically, if the small fights are costing us more than we're charging to see if we need to adjust our rates. I think that's the main thing. We need to raise anything or lower anything.
I just didn't know if it was if it's cumbersome or if it's easy to do, or so that's one of the things we talked about.
It's not easy to do because some of these numbers I don't see, and I've got to find a way to get them. But if there is a way to get them, I just have to talk to the right people.
So just follow up on that, I think just by having a list of fights that come up, and then every time, it might be helpful to say how many inspectors you had at that fight,
How
what
much
the
each
travel
one got paid,
expenses, what was,
Right.
just for coverage of the fight. So as we meet with, legislature, talk about our budget, and approving all that, we'll be able to go back. We'll have a record for the last however months that we've kept track, so we can say this is actually what it costs to
Right.
regulate these things.
It'd be handy to have if we have to ask for an appropriation of the general fund.
Absolutely.
So,
So,
not enough money is generated from this, so we do have to have.
Yeah.
So including stuff like number of inspectors per event, what their travel costs were, because we've talked about it at various times. We need someone in this part of the state, we need more inspectors here because of travel costs. And so, all right. Good, thank you. Any other old business? Move on to new business. Says legislation.
I think we kind of got at that earlier.
Okay.
The pro wrestling part is the only thing is basically what I talked about earlier. We had mentioned a couple of meetings ago, I brought up the fact that I thought if we could regulate pro wrestling, it would help our commission a lot. And pro wrestling needs to be regulated with the injuries and the drug use and things that have come public lately. That I think it would be a good thing for us to regulate it, for this to at least have a presence there, and that they would be subject to the same taxes as a combat sport event. And the main reason I brought this up again is because at the UCC that we had in Nashville, there was one of the promoters of TNA was there, and he and I talked for a while, and he told me he would welcome regulation. He said he would. He said he goes to Kentucky, he pays the taxes. He said he has no trouble paying the taxes here. He says because it brings up the level of the sport. You don't have these, fly-by-night promoters going into community centers, putting up rings with barbed wire on them, and throwing tacks and glass in the ring, and having the blood matches, and they're bleeding all over. So this kind of legislation would virtually end those kind of shows. You hate to put anybody out of business, but those kind of shows are dang. Have you guys ever seen one of those?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I was at an MMA show many years ago where they let this small wrestling group do an exhibition in the middle of the they literally were throwing tacks in the ring. I mean, just all kind of things in the ring, and making themselves bleed. It was crazy. And it was one of those small organizations that goes to, and like I said, I don't want to put anybody out of business, but that's really, really dangerous that that's going on. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're here for. So not only would that be good for the industry, it would help raise the level of the industry, so it would help all the bigger organizations, and it would help our commission also. And I just wanted to bring that up.
What states are currently regulating it?
In August, all the states that I called, I asked which ones, and I don't right off the top of my head. Most of the ones around here do regulate it. I know Georgia does not, because I remember talking to Andy about it. I remember he does not. I know Kentucky does, Missouri does. Kentucky does, Mississippi does, and Arkansas do. I'm not sure about like Alabama and Missouri. I know Georgia does not.
I wonder if those folks avoid those states that regulate it.
That's what my curious is.
I wonder if those states, the TNE and those folks avoid those states who do regulate.
Well, TNA said they go to Kentucky all the time, and they pay it there, and they won't have trouble paying it here. But now,
And
That's
they
not-
have their own rules, I guess, at that point, be kind of like just letting the kind of rules that they have set in place, and if there aren't official rules, kind of, we have to draft up rules, I guess, specifically for that.
I think so.
But I'm sure we could put it up where we can adopt, because you don't have those wrestling things. They have like different kinds of matches with different sets of rules.
Well,
The
until,
cage match. And,
when the UFC comes to town, we pretty much allow them to run their own show.
yeah, well,
To an extent.
they have to follow our state rules. Like we have a few rules that are different. For the most part, we have unified rules, so it's the same.
Yeah.
But there's like one rule in particular that's different here, and we follow that. That's no linear kicks to the knee, which is not in the unified rules. It was proposed in the unified rules, but it wasn't approved. So we have that rule that the rest of the country doesn't have. I think it's a good rule. You know, it's in our boxing we have rules that are different. But you're right. We've got there is a passage in the law that says we can't adopt the rules of another organization.
I wonder, I would be in favor of it. I'm just wondering what is it that we're going to regulate? Like, what our rules going to be?
We're gonna, yeah.
I'll have to talk to the other commissions and see actually what they do, what they require, and what they don't require, things like that. 'Cause I'm sure it's a loose guideline.
And the question is about how to propose that we do enforce regulating that.
That's right.
I mean,
Yeah, 'cause we wouldn't
can't
send
come
the
from
same number of
commission,
inspectors.
I don't believe we can't.
We wouldn't send
that.
the same number of inspectors to wrestling that we do to like MMA, but you know,
Does that have to be done legally too?
yeah, that would have to be done.
Which means someone would have to approach
Right.
legislature. And again, it goes into this, we can't from a commission.
But it could be an amendment to this bill that we already have, that's already in place. It could be an amendment to the athletic commission bill that just says that wrestling's included in combat sports.
I propose maybe having Jeff find out what
I'll talk to
the
the
rules
official.
look like from another commission, and then
I think it'd be interesting to know also with that, maybe what are these other big groups, you know, wrestling federation, what do they think about it, you know? Is it positive, is it a negative? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's going to
well,
affect
TV
them.
liked it. They said they liked it.
I'll try to get in touch with that TNA guy. I've got his name written down somewhere. I'll try to get in touch with him. And if I can, I'll try to get him to call into the next meeting and let him talk. See if we can get him to talk. And I can't remember what his
That'd be
name
helpful
is.
just to hear their
But I
perspective.
wrote his name down, and I've got his name in my office. So I'll try to get in touch with him and just see, you know, can you call in? You know,
As far as our role, I mean, it certainly does make sense if there are these shows that are being unregulated that are potentially dangerous. I mean, that is
Right.
kind of what our role is. But be curious to see what folks that already do have rules and regulations, what their thoughts are.
yeah, I wonder if they require blood tests with all the bleeding that they do in wrestling. You know, like every 6 months, B, Hep C, and HIV test.
And drug testing, you know,
Yeah.
to different.
Okay, so between now and April, start researching.
I'll get some more
pro
information.
wrestling.
Melissa, any thoughts on that? Were you able to follow that conversation?
Yeah, I was able to follow it a little bit. That's a really touchy subject matter among a lot of folks, and I think you're right, Chairman. I think we need to see what some of these associations' opinions are.
Why is it touchy?
Gather some more information. I think I would love to get the tax on wrestling, but there's also some very strong leadership over there at the legislature who are involved in wrestling. And when they attempted these attempts years and years ago, it failed miserably. And that's my only concern is that we put a lot of effort in things, but we must, do our homework first before we're just spinning our wheels, because this came up about, I want to say, almost 12, 15 years ago at the state legislature, and it was a big to-do over us stepping in to regulate wrestling. You had Jerry Lawler get involved, which had the WCW name behind it here, and you got, basically they ruled that it was an entertainment sport and that we were not to regulate entertainment sports. And they even made a joke about it. They started calling it wrestling at the state legislature. So I just think that's a very hard sell, and you still have some old lawmakers that are very heavily involved, especially up in the Chattanooga area, Jeff. You might want to check with, I know NCAA wrestling up there at Chattanooga has some big associations around that area, I think, wrestling. And I would just check with those folks and see how they feel.
Okay.
Because if they're not picking up the phone, calling their lawmakers, supporting it, then it would fail again miserably, I think.
I'll do some research. But you know, about the same time you're talking about, there was a big deal down in Mississippi. Mississippi tried to pass it the first time. You know, Jerry Lawler went down there and testified, and he said, "Well, look, you're telling everybody this is real. It needs to be regulated." And Jerry Lawler famously told the Mississippi Commission, asked them if they believed in the Easter Bunny, and they didn't pass it at the time, but they passed it later.
I'm looking at this now from like mid-2000, 2005, I guess, where Rick Santorum was a lobbyist for Vince McMahon of the WWF, and said that because professional wrestling was not a sport, it could be under the jurisdiction of the State Athletic Commission.
Was that in this state? Was that in this?
Maybe Philadelphia? Yeah, Philadelphia. But there's pros and cons because they say how the WWE polices themselves, but people are using steroids and drugs and dying before they're 50. And they blame that steroid and drug use on that, so that's where regulation would help. So I guess I agree with Melissa. It looks like there's a lot of pro and cons for people saying it's professional, it's entertainment, and they make a lot more money if they're not regulated by the state. On the other side, there's safety, which is a good reason for us to look into it.
They need to be regulated.
But I think that's where our argument is. I mean, I know we always come back to, you know, our budget, but the reason for me to, you know, look into this further personally would be from a safety standpoint. I think that's our role in the commission, is a safety standpoint. But it certainly sounds like we ought to look into both sides of it, but maybe if we get some comments from some folks that you talked to, Jeff.
I'll research.
Any other comments or thoughts on that?
I agree.
Sounds good.
And I apologize, sir. I didn't recognize you for being here.
No problem.
We've had a guest here today. So did you have anything that you wanted to address the commission about?
For anybody who came in after we introduced Arnold earlier, this is Arnold Murphy.
Who is our guest? Can you have them introduce themselves?
It's Arnold Murphy, who's our chief inspector, who goes to
Okay.
every event. Arnold is here. Yeah, you know Arnold.
So my apologies, sir. For
No
not
problem.
saying anything earlier. Any comments or thoughts?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I think Arnold has been at every event since we've started the commission.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or at least since I've had this job. Anyway, I think he's been at every event.
All right. Well, any other discussion today? Motion.
Chairman, I do have one other question. I'm sorry, it's a new business. Just one other thing quickly. Jeff, I just want to ask, because I got one or two calls, and I just didn't know how to respond, and they were months ago. Forget who it even was, but I got asked, can we do, now that we're going to be regulating pro-am and professional, and we're getting some fights booked, what do you do in a circumstance where we have two going on at the same time? What are we doing? Because some people have said that they're having to change their dates.
We actually have two on the same night. In March the 8th, a Friday night in March, we've got the charity boxing and the MMA in Spring Hill. Now, Franklin and Spring Hill are really close, and I've got a really good crew here in Nashville. I have really good inspectors here. So what I'll do is we'll use the 4 inspectors. I'll have, the good thing is the boxing does their licensing on the day of the event. The MMA does their licensing the day before. So the way we'll work this is Arnold and I will both be at the licensing the day before the MMA, and then the day of the fights, Arnold will start out the day at the charity boxing where you can run the licensing there. I'll start out the day at Spring Hill. And then I have 2 strong inspectors here in Nashville, so I have 2 at one and 2 at the other. Now I'll actually go back and forth between the 2, and I'm not sure if Arnold will go back and forth or not, but that's my plan for that. But we have strong inspectors, and with Arnold's help, and if we were to have 2 fairly large events, we may have to get like Kerry Little or someone of the former investigators who helped us out on the front end. If we had 2 large events, we'd probably have to ask for his help. But right now we've got some very strong inspectors, and with Arnold's help, I think we could do multiple events. Now, if we got to 3 or 4, it'd be a problem, but I don't think 2 would be a problem right now, especially if they were in Memphis or Nashville.
I just want to know, do we need to think about in the future as a commission? I know you have it covered now, but we haven't thought down the line to have a discussion to what happens if there is a big professional event in Memphis. And as you know, if UFC comes, then other amateur and other folks want to throw fights that same night in the state. Have we ever talked about this or planned for this, that we can't have you in Memphis and have you in Knoxville?
Right. I would probably have to have help from Arnold. Would probably have to be at one, and I'd have to be at the other.
We have it written, I think. I don't know if it's in whatever rules and regulations, but we do have it written down. I know in your job title that you had the authority to appoint someone.
Okay. I just want to make sure we were covered.
At least I don't know if that's in our rules and regulations. But
It's called the commission's designee.
Yeah, that you would be able to designate someone to.
As long as the commission's designee is there.
I think that was in your job plan that you all did.
Right. I don't know if it's in the. Does it have to be part of our policy? Is it? Okay. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to adjourn.
Just one question. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 11th.
That's correct.
Is it at 1 o'clock?
Yes, April 11th. That may be in the 3rd floor. We tried to get this for April, and it was already booked. And I got an email today from Kimberly Whaley, and it said she was working on some things for me. And I saw an email that said she'd accepted something, so I think we may be in the 3rd floor in April. But I'll let you know. April the 11th.
That's not Easter
If
break.
there's
I'm still looking.
No, Easter's in March this year.
Oh, is it? Okay. Easter Sunday, March 31st. Okay. I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll
I
second.
second that.
The motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you all.
All right, y'all have a good weekend.
You
Thank
too,
you,
Melissa.
Joe Smith was at Fights in Little Rock. The reason Joe's not here today, he had to go to Fights in Little